Hello, and welcome to another edition of First Chapter Fridays here at the Alameda Free Library. My name is Miss Virginia, and today I'm going to be sharing a few chapters of a new book we have here at the library. It's called Simon Sort of Says, and this is by Erin Bow. It is at times funny, at times touching, at times really sad. So there's a lot going on in this book, but it's well worth your time if you're looking for a book you just don't want to put down. I will read a little bit of the jacket and then we'll get started. Oh, also, it is available on Hoopla as an ebook through our Hoopla account, which you can find on our website. So take a look there if you can't get your hands on the real thing. An ebook is it's available as well. So look for it. Okay, here we go. I'm just going to read the jacket. Simon O'Keefe tells a lot of stories, like how his family was driven out of Omaha by alpacas, and how his church deacon dad accidentally gave a squirrel a holy sacrament, and how his undertaker mom occasionally has to wrangle emus. But the story Simon doesn't tell is the one he'd do anything to forget. Simon is the only survivor of a school shooting. That story has followed him everywhere except his new home in the National Quiet Zone, where the internet is banned so radio astronomers can listen for signs of life in space. So that's the gist of the story. He is starting over in a new tiny town in Nebraska. Chapter 1, in which we are driven out of Omaha by alpacas. People are always asking why my family came to the National Quiet Zone. Like we need a reason. I mean, who wouldn't want to live in a place with no internet and no cell phones and no TV and no radio? Who wouldn't want to live surrounded by emu farms in a town that's half astrophysicists and half people who are afraid of their microwaves? I mean, isn't that the American dream? Hint, no. Obviously, there's a story. So when people ask, I tell them we left Omaha because we were driven out by alpacas. Back in Omaha, my dad, who's a Catholic deacon, was the liturgical director at one of the big churches in the suburbs. That means he planned the masses and things like a wedding planner, but for Jesus. One of the highlights of his year was the Feast of St. Francis, where they bless the animals. The animal blessing can be a little tricky, even when it's just cats and dogs, plus the handful of 4-year-olds who bring their gerbils and goldfish in bowls. People aren't always super smart about it. They don't think, there are going to be dogs at this, so maybe Mr. Tuna should stay in his kitty carrier for the hour-long mass. Well, usually at least one cat climbs on at least one head. But the year we had to leave, my dad forgot to make a list of pets you can bring, and, this is the important part, pets you cannot bring. So in addition to the cats and dogs, there was a pot-bellied pig, 2 alpacas, a giant tortoise, and a great horned owl named Sandy. St. Francis could talk to wolves, but Father Kirk was not so blessed. 3 years ago, a freaked-out tomcat named Pinky got spooked by the bulldog in line behind him. He leaped from his owner's arms and took refuge under Father Kirk's vestments. Pinky clawed his way up Father Kirk's leg and, well, let's just say it's a good thing Father Kirk had already taken that vow of celibacy. The Pinky incident marked a real turning point in the relationship between Father Kirk and my dad, who likes to embrace what he calls a little holy chaos when he plans church stuff. St. Francis would probably approve, but Father Kirk did not. And last year, the alpacas, the ones my dad forgot to ban. There were 2 of them, and they were being led up the aisle for a blessing when one of them blinked its cartoon eyelashes and stopped so abruptly that the tortoise, being pulled up the aisle behind them, slid off the back of its dolly and started to make a slow break for freedom. The frozen alpaca stood, looking at the altar, and some kind of ancestral memory kicked in about things that used to happen on altars. It stood there blinking its big Bambi eyes, looking cute and seeing blood and knives. And then it made this noise. The noise started low, like someone had sat on a whoopee cushion. But as her owner tugged on her halter, the alpaca, whose name was Beth, got louder. She unhinged her jaw and made a noise like a bagpipe gargling. Then the other alpaca started in. It sounded like angry Scots with chest colds were coming to kill us all. The acoustics were very good in our old church. Sometimes musical ensembles would come to record albums there. So the noise carried as the alpacas debuted their duet for panicky death visions. The dogs started howling and the cats started making that noise like opera singers who've been kicked in the privates. And Sandy, the great horned owl, tore away from his owner's glove, circled among the pillars for a long moment, then swooped down to eat Mr. Tuna. Father Kirk came dashing down the aisle to help, and the alpaca spit all over his vestments. Sandy, the great horned owl, landed on the altar with Mr. Tuna's body in tow. The media was there. My father got fired. There aren't many jobs out there for liturgical directors. There wasn't another one in all of Omaha. But my mother is an undertaker, and undertakers can work anywhere. And that's why we came here. Anyway, that's what I tell people. A note about Grin and Barrett. So we packed up our stuff and moved to a little town called, I swear this is true, Grin and Barrett, Nebraska. Grin and Barrett is a one stoplight kind of town. The kind of town where the funeral home is called Slaughter and Sons, and has been for so long that no one thinks it's weird. The kind of town where people give directions with the words up or down or over and tell you that if you get to the river, you've gone too far. The kind of town where the hardware store is also the drugstore, which also sells various kinds of feeds and animal supplies. So you have to be careful that you don't go in for cough syrup and come out with animal birthing lubricant. It is home to the Grin and Barrett Fighting Badgers, and it is famous for 3 things. First, the name. It's worse than Truth or Consequences, New Mexico, or Come by Chance, Newfoundland, or even Intercourse, Pennsylvania. They call it GNB sometimes, but that doesn't help. Second, it's got this cathedral-sized church, way too big for the stinky little town. As far as I can make out, 100 years ago, a local priest thought he was going to get to be bishop, but didn't, and somehow convinced people to build him this enormous church as a consolation prize. It's named for St. Barbara, the patron saint of architects, explosives, and people in danger of sudden death. Third, and most important by a long shot, Grin and Barrett is surrounded by radio telescopes. We first saw the telescopes from the air. The town council flew us out from Omaha because they were courting my parents pretty hard. Slaughter and Sons, the funeral home, had been without an operator for way too long, and they were so eager to recruit Mom, she started to worry that there was going to be a sketchy backlog in the basement freezers. But it turned out there wasn't, and we were interested because the big church meant that there was work for Dad, too. And of course, I would have moved to Mars if it got me away from what had happened in Omaha. When our tiny plane landed, for a second, I thought we had moved. I thought for a second we had moved to Mars, I mean. Grin and Barrett is on the Dismal River, and on the edge of the Dismal River National Forest. The land's kind of rolling and has more trees than you might expect from western Nebraska, though fewer than you might expect from a national forest. They're scruffy and piney and dark. It was winter when the town council flew us out. We landed around dawn, and there was mist coming up from the snow, and the pine trees on the hills looked black. And sticking up out of the mist and black rolling hills were these things. Bone white, lighthouse tall, roller coaster, complicated skeleton ghosts in the fog, radio telescopes. They listened to faint radio signals from space. If you agree to live in Grin and Barrett or anywhere within a 30-mile radius, hint, there is nothing within a 30-mile radius. You cannot let out any radio signals that might mess that up. When I first heard about that, I thought that meant no radio, and it does, but it also means no television, no cell phones, no microwave ovens, and no internet. When I heard that, I thought, perfect. Let's see, I think I'm gonna have to stop there. So the next chapter is pretty long. The next chapter is about meeting his new class. He's in 7th grade and he starting a new school in the middle of February. And it can be very difficult, as you middle schoolers know, to start a new school in 7th grade. Anyway, this book, Simon Sort of Says, is well worth your time. It's a very good story, really a good read. And like I said, it's part funny, part touching, part sad. It might make you even laugh out loud. That's what it did to me. So I hope you'll check it out if you can get your hands on the book. If you cannot, don't forget there is an ebook available on Hoopla. I didn't find it on Libby yet, but I have a feeling it's going to appear there soon. So when you get a chance, do check it out. Simon Sort of Says by Erin Bow. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.